Hello, everybody. I have part 3 of McBroom's wonderful 1 acre farm that I am going to read to you today. It is titled McBroom's Ear. I hope that you've been enjoying this story. I think it's, again, I find it funny. I smile and laugh to myself, sometimes out loud when I read this. In the last chapter, we heard about how McBroom broke his leg. And we heard about what happened when big winds blew through the wonderful 1 acre farm. In this final chapter, or part of the book, McBroom's Ear, I think we're going to learn a little bit about corn. Again, I'm reading on my phone. I don't have a paperback book. So I won't be able to show you pictures, but I hope that that you turn on your imaginations, and that you can, so you can see it all in your head as you listen along. Grasshoppers. Yes, they did get wind of our 1 acre farm. The long-legged, saw-legged, hop-legged rascals ate us out of house and home. You know how grasshoppers are. They'd as soon spit tobacco juice as look at you when they're terribly hungry creatures. I guess there's nothing that can eat more in less time than a swarm of grasshoppers. Green things especially make their mouths water. I don't intend to talk about it with a he and haw. Mercy, no. If you know me, Josh McBroom, you know I'd as soon as live in a tree as tamper with the truth. I'd best start with the weather. Summer was just waking up, but the days weren't near warm enough yet for grasshoppers. The young'uns were helping me to dig a water well. They talked of growing one thing and another to enter into the county fair. I guess you've heard how amazingly rich our farm is. Anything will grow on it quick. Seeds burst in the ground and crops shoot right up before your eyes. Why, just yesterday our oldest boy dropped a 5-cent piece, and before he could pick it up, the nickel had grown into a quarter. Early one morning, a skinny, tangled-haired stranger came ambling down the road. My, he was tall. I do believe if his hat fell off, it would take a day or two just to reach the ground. "Howdy, sir," he said. "I'm Slim-Faced John from here, there, and other places. I'll paint your barn cheap." That man was not only tall, skinny, and tangle-haired, he was near-sighted. "We don't own a barn," I said. He squinted and laughed. "In that case," he said, "I'll paint it for free." "Done," I smiled. He painted that no barn in less than a second, with time left over. He appeared to be hungry, so my dear wife Melissa gave him a hearty breakfast, and he went ambling away. "I'll be back," he waved. The young'uns and I kept digging that well. My, it was hard work. They'd lower a bucket, I'd fill it with earth, and they'd haul it up like a tug-of-war, all 11 of them. The days grew hotter and longer. Flies began to drop out of the air with sunstroke. But it still wasn't grasshopper weather. "Will, Jill, Hester, Chester, Peter, Polly, Tim, Tom, Mary, Larry, and little Clorinda," I had to shout from the bottom of the well. "Work to do. Haul up the bucket." "Aw, Pa," Chester complained from the treehouse, "I'm fixing to grow a prize watermelon for the fair. A 50-pounder. "I think I'll grow a pumpkin," Polly said. "Well, I'm growing impatient," I said. "Haul up the bucket, my lambs, and dump it. County fair's still a week off." The next day was a real sizzler. At high noon, the yellow wax beans began melting off the vines. They dripped like candles. No, it wasn't grasshopper weather yet. The leggy creatures would catch cold on a chilly day like that. We finished the well at last, with the bucketfuls of earth standing in a big heap beside it. Along about supper time, the tall, skinny, tangle-haired, near-sighted stranger was back. "Howdy," he said. "I'm Slim-Faced John from here, there, and other places. I'll dig you a water well, cheap." "We've got a well," I said. "In that case," he answered, "I'll dig it free." He stayed for supper and then went ambling away. "I'll be back," he waved. Another day passed. The sunball began to outdo itself. Hot, Why, the next morning it was so infernal hot that a block of ice felt warm to the touch. Mamma had to boil water to cool it off. Sunflowers along the road picked up their roots and hurried under the trees for shade. That was grasshopper weather. Just after breakfast, the first jumpers arrived. They came in 2s and 4s. Our farm stood green as an emerald, and it was bound to catch their eye. Before long, they were turning up in 6s and 8s. I must admit that those first visitors surprised us with their nice table manners. They didn't spit tobacco juice any which way. Peter set out an old tin coffee can, and they used that for a spittoon. By noon, hop legs were arriving by the 50s and 100s. They nibbled our cabbage and lettuce, but it was nothing to be alarmed about. We could grow vegetables faster than they can eat them, 3 or 4 crops a day. Along about sundown, the saw-legged visitors came whirring in by the hundreds and thousands. But I wasn't worried. Grasshoppers are hardly worth counting in small numbers like that. Pa, Chester said at breakfast, county fair's tomorrow. Reckon it's time to set out my watermelons. I'm going to grow a prize tomato, Mary declared, big as a balloon. You young uns use the patch behind the house. I said I aim to plant the farm in corn. The grasshoppers didn't get in our way. Larry and little Clorinda fed them turnip greens out of their hands. I got the field planted in no time. My, it was fine corn-growing weather. The stalks leapt right up, dangling with ears. Suddenly, a silvery green cloud rose off the horizon and raced toward us. Grasshoppers! Grasshoppers by the thousands! Grasshoppers by the millions! Little did we know it was the beginning of the Great Grasshopper War, or as it came to be called, the War of McBroom's Ear. Will Jill, Hester, Chester, Peter, Polly, Tim, Tom, Mary, Larry, and little Clorinda, I shouted, brooms and branches, shoo them off. We began yelling and running about and waving our weapons. The grasshoppers spun over our ripening cornfield. They feasted their eyes and flew off. We scared them away, Tim declared. No, I said, that was just the advance party. They went away for the main herd. And here they come! Acres of grasshoppers, square miles of grasshoppers. They came streaking toward us like a great roaring thunderbolt of war. Brooms and branches, I yelled. The hungry devils tucked napkins under their chins and swooped down for the attack. Mercy, the air got so thick with hoppers you could swing a bucket once and fill it twice. They made a whirring, hopping, jumping fog. We could barely see a foot beyond our noses. But we could hear the ravenous rascals. They were chomping and chewing up our cornfield and spitting out the cobs. They ate that farm right down to the ground in exactly 4 seconds flat. Then they rose in the air, still hungry as wolves, and waited for the next crop. Pa, Chester said, they skinned my watermelons. Pa, Mary cried, they didn't even wait for my prize tomatoes to open. They ate them green. Pa, little Clorinda said, what happened to your socks? I looked down. Glory be, those infernal dinner guests had eaten the socks right out of my shoes. Green socks. All that they left were the holes in the toes. Some of the young uns broke into tears. We won't be able to grow anything for the county fair. We're not beat yet, my lambs, I said, thinking as hard as I could. Those hoppers did have us outnumbered, but not outsmarted. I'm going to town for my first seed. Better clear away the corn cobs. I drove to town in our air-cooled Franklin automobile and was back before noon with 50 pounds of fine seed. The grasshoppers were still stretched all over the sky, waiting. The young uns had cleared the farm, throwing the corn cobs on the pile of dirt beside the well. Not a moment to lose, I said. Help scatter the seed. Before long, our farm was bushed out, green as a 1-acre jungle. Those hoppers smacked their lips and fought to get at it. They whirred and swarmed and crunched and crunched. The crop disappeared as if it were sucked up by a tornado. Well, you should have seen how surprised they were. The first wave of hoppers was all but breathing fire, and no wonder. They had just died on hot green peppers. They streaked off in a hurry looking for something to drink. Of course, there were still tons of grasshoppers left. We kept sowing crops of hot green peppers all afternoon until there wasn't a jump keg to be seen. We found out later they had swarmed to a lake in the next county and drunk it dry. But they'd be back. The young'uns would have to grow their prize winners in a hurry. "Pa, look!" little Clorinda shouted. She was pointing to the tall heap of dirt littered with corn cobs. Glory be! The grasshoppers had missed a lone kernel, and it had taken root behind our backs. A corn stalk was growing up as big as a tree. The dirt hill was powerful rich. The roots of that wondrous stalk were having a banquet. A single ear of corn began to form before our eyes. Big? Why, it was already fatter than a pot-bellied stove, and still growing. "That looks like a prize winner to me," I declared. "You scamps will go in partners." Jill and Hester and Polly climbed to their treehouse to keep a sharp eye out for grasshoppers. The ear of corn grew longer and fatter. It was a beauty. The stalk began to bend under its weight, and it was ripening fast. Didn't we get busy, though? We fixed loops of rope around the ears so as to let it down easy. Will climbed up a ladder with a bucksaw and went to work. It must have taken him 5 minutes to saw that giant ear off the stalk. We eased it down with the ropes. I tell you, we could hardly believe our eyes. The stalk of ear was so big you couldn't see it at a single glance. You had to look twice. "Grasshoppers!" Jill shouted down from the treehouse. "Grasshoppers coming, Pa!" "Quick," I said, "into the house." It took all of us to lift that ear of corn, but it wouldn't fit through the door, and it wouldn't fit through the window. "The wall!" I shouted. We lowered it by the well. We lowered it by ropes and covered the well over with some rusty sheets of corrugated tin, and just in time. Those hoppers had spotted our giant ear from the sky and came whirring across the farm in a green blizzard, but they couldn't get at that ear of corn. "It's safe for the night," I said. "How will we ever get it past the hoppers to the fair tomorrow?" Mary asked. I don't have to tell you the problem gave me a sleepless night. About 4 a.m, I jumped out of the bed and woke the young'uns. "Brooms and buckets," I said. "Follow me." We tiptoed outside, careful not to wake the jump legs. We quietly raised our ear of corn from the well and replaced the sheets of corrugated tin. Then I filled the buckets from the shed. "Start painting," I whispered. The young'uns dipped their brooms and painted the giant corn ear from end to end and all over. At sunup, the grasshoppers rose from the fields and went looking for breakfast. They headed straight for the well, banging their heads on the rusty tin. My, what a clatter! They thought our enormous big ear was still down there. Well, it was actually in plain sight, only they didn't recognize it. The husk wasn't green anymore. We had whitewashed it. We lifted it to the roof of the old Franklin and tied it down. "Everybody pile in," I smiled, starting the motor. "We're going to the fair." Just then Mr. Slim-Faced John came along. "Howdy," he replied. "I'll paint your farmhouse cheap." "Oh, I dearly like that," Mama said. "Red with white window sills." "Done," I said. "You'll find paint in the shed," and we were off. Well, you should have seen heads turn along the way. What was that thing on the roof of our car? An ear of corn? No, sir, no farmer can raise corn that big and white as chalk. We bumped along the dirt road, following signs to the county fair. We enjoyed the sights, barns and silos, and cows chewing their cuds in the shade. "How much farther?" Polly asked. 10-12 miles, I said. "Be patient." I noticed the prairie windmills begin to turn. A hot wind was coming, dragging a cloud with it. We could hear the rumble of thunder. "How much farther, Pa?" Tim asked. 8-10 miles, I said. "Be patient." But I didn't like the look of that cloud. It grew darker and heavier and came blowing our way. "Hanson," I called to the young'uns. "Thunder shower ahead." We met the storm head-on. It didn't amount to much, but those raindrops were almost hot enough to scald you. They bounced like sparks off the hood. A moment later, the sky was blue again, and the summer shower was behind us. "How much farther, Pa?" Mary asked. 6-8 miles, I said. "Be patient." "Pa," Will said. He hadn't bothered to pull his head in the window, and his hair was wet. "Pa, look What's happened to our corn? I jammed on the brakes and got out to see. Lo and behold, the husk was bright green again. The summer shower had washed off the whitewash. I jumped back to the wheel and off we spun. Watch for grasshoppers, I shouted. I'm watching, Pa, little Clorinda answered, and here they come. Well, it was a race. The hoppers came roaring after us in full battle formation. The old Franklin creaked and groaned and clanked, but her heart was in it. We bumped in and out of the ruts and jumped a few. They're gaining on us, Pa. I had the foot pedal to the floorboard. Soon we could see the flags and banners of the county fair ahead, but not soon enough. The first hop legs were landing on the roof, and we could hear them ripping and tearing at the husk. By the time we reached the fairgrounds, we'd have nothing left but the cob. But the old Franklin started to backfire, banging and booming something fierce. Those hop legs jumped a mile, and we made it across the fairgrounds. I charged right into the main exhibition building and jammed on the brakes. Shut all the doors, I shouted. Grasshoppers, grasshoppers, coming! The doors swung shut, and we could breathe easy at last. Folks began to cluster around, their eyes rising as their jaws fell at the wonder of our ear of corn. And I declare, if the hungry rascals hadn't husked it as neat as you please. We lifted it down off the roof and put it on display. The judges came by and asked what name to enter it by. McBroom, I smiled. Will, Jill, Hester, Chester, Peter, Polly, Tim, Tom, Mary, Larry, and little Clorinda. McBroom. Well, the judges gave it first, second, third prize, and an honorable mention, too. But my, it was getting overheated in there with the doors closed. The young'uns lined up to have their pictures taken for the county paper. There was one long smile reaching from Will at one end all the way to little Clorinda at the other. The noon sun kept beating down on the roof, and all of a sudden there was a loud bang. I thought at first it was our tired old Franklin, but no, it was the young'uns' enormous, big, prize-winning ear of corn beginning to pop. The inside of that building had grown so infernal hot, it was a perfect popcorn popper. Well, it did get noisy in there. Kernels swelled and exploded like great white cannonballs. They bounced off the house, the roof, and the walls. Pop, 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 pop. Folks ducked and others ran. Corn in their rows boomed away in regular broadsides. I tell you, popcorn was flying all over the hall and piling up like a heavy snowfall. Pop, 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 pop. In no time at all, we were buried in light, fluffy popcorn. It swelled to the roof and forced open the doors. It overflowed the building at both ends. There wasn't a grasshopper left in sight. All that ruckus had sent them flying. As far as I know, they headed straight for the full moon. Must have heard it was made of green cheese. We never saw them again. We stayed the afternoon. Everyone did. Folks melted up buckets of prize butter, and somebody went in town for barrels of salt. There was more than enough fresh popcorn to go around, salted and buttered. It was delicious. One piece was enough to feed an entire family. Did I tell you I'd as soon live in a tree as tamper with the truth? Well, when we got back that night, we found our farmhouse chewed and gnawed and eaten to the ground. Mr. Slim-Faced John was not only tall, skinny, tangle-haired, and nearsighted, he was also colorblind. Painted our house green. Yes, it's a mite crowded living up here in the young'uns' treehouse, but those prize ribbons, they're almighty nice to look at. That is the end of the third chapter, or the third part of McBroom's wonderful 1 Acre Farm. That's the end of the book. I hope that you enjoyed that. You have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.